last radio station crackled into static, and Kara smacked the dash with the heel of her hand. "Piece of shit," she muttered, leaning forward to peer through the foggy windshield. Snow hammered the glass, thick and blinding. Her old Honda groaned as she pushed it up the steep curve of the mountain road. The gas light had been on for 30 miles, but she kept ignoring it, teeth gritted. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A text lit up. "Mom, where are you?" Kara snatched it up, typing fast with one hand. "On my way. Storm sucks. Be there soon." She hit send. The next moment, her screen flashed. No service. "God damn it," Kara hissed. She tossed the phone back onto the seat, eyes darting to the road. The snow was coming down even harder now, fat, wet flakes splattering against the windshield. Her wipers squealed. The headlights barely cut through the white curtain ahead. She swallowed hard, knuckles tightening on the steering wheel. Stay calm. Keep driving. Just a few more miles. But then, a low glow appeared in the distance. Gas station lights. Kara let out a shaky breath, almost laughing. She flicked on her turn signal out of habit, though there wasn't another car for miles. The little car rolled onto the icy lot, tires crunching. She pulled up under the flickering canopy, engine rumbling, staring at the rundown building. A neon sign buzzed faintly. Open. Inside, shadows moved. Kara killed the engine and sat there, staring, heart thudding. "All right," she whispered to herself. "Let's go." She shoved the door open. The cold slammed into her like a slap. Kara hunched her shoulders as the wind cut across the lot, pushing snow into her face. Her boots crunched over the icy ground. She tugged her jacket tighter, squinting up at the dim neon open sign flickering in the window. The building looked ancient, cracked bricks, old green trim, a rusting ice chest out front. As she reached the door, she noticed a battered pickup truck parked near the side, coated in snow, and a dark Jeep pulled up under the awning. A white van sat off to the far edge of the lot, its windows frosted over. Kara's hand hovered near her pocket, instinctively checking for her phone, though she knew it was useless out here. She yanked the door open. A little bell jingled overhead. Inside, warm air hit her face, along with the sharp smell of old coffee and motor oil. The gas station had one long counter lined with dusty snacks, racks of chips, and faded drink coolers humming against the far wall. A couple of small tables sat near a grimy window, the kind of place you'd never stop at unless you were desperate. 3 people sat at one of the tables. A big man with a beer gut and thick grey beard, Mason, raised his head lazily, eyes bloodshot. His trucker cap sat crooked on his head. Beside him, a younger black woman, Nina, sat with her arms crossed, watching Kara carefully. Next to Nina, a skinny young man, Tyler, fiddled anxiously with his fingers, barely glancing up. At the far counter, another man leaned against the wall, Oscar, mid-40s, built like a brick, with a military haircut and sharp eyes. He gave Kara a slow once-over, but didn't say a word. Kara forced a half smile. "Hell of a night, huh?" Mason snorted. "Blizzard's a bastard. Roads are shut down up the ridge." "Figures," Kara muttered, brushing snow from her shoulders. Nina gave her a polite nod. Tyler just kept glancing nervously at the window, foot tapping under the table. Kara exhaled, shivering. She rubbed her hands together, eyes darting to the coffee pot behind the counter. The wind howled against the windows, rattling the old glass. Kara moved toward the coffee pot, unscrewing the lid and sniffing. It smelled burnt, but she didn't care. "Mind if I?" she asked, raising the pot. "Go ahead," Mason grinned, raising his can. "It's crap, but it's warm." Kara poured herself a cup, wrapping her cold fingers around it. "So," she said, glancing around, "everyone's stuck here for the night?" "Looks that way," Nina said calmly. Her voice was smooth, almost too calm. "Road's been closed about an hour. Plow won't come till morning." "Great," Kara muttered. She took a sip, grimaced. Burnt was an understatement. Tyler's knee bounced under the table. He gave a quick, anxious smile. It's really coming down out there." "Yeah, no shit," Kara shot back, then winced at herself. She softened her tone. "Sorry, long day." Oscar stayed silent, arms crossed over his chest, eyes sharp. He hadn't stopped watching her since she walked in. Mason leaned back in his chair, cracking his knuckles. "Name's Mason. This here's Nina and her brother Tyler. And the guy at the wall. That's Oscar. We've all been making the best of it." Kara raised an eyebrow. "Making the best of it?" Mason chuckled, lifting his drink. "Little booze, little card games, little complaining. What else you gonna do snowed in?" Kara gave a dry laugh, sipping her coffee again. Her skin prickled with unease. She glanced at Oscar. "You don't talk much." Oscar shrugged, voice low and steady. "Not much to say." "Fair." Kara sighed, feeling her shoulders tighten. She glanced toward the window. Outside, the storm was a solid white wall. Her car looked like it was already half buried in snow. Inside, the heater rattled faintly. Mason cleared his throat. "What about you, sweetheart? What brings you up here?" Kara smirked tightly. "Family stuff." He raised an eyebrow. "Boyfriend trouble?" "No," she shot back flatly. "Family." Mason chuckled again, leaning back. Nina shot him a sharp look. The tension hung there, sticky and uncomfortable. Kara pulled up a chair, dragging it slightly away from the others. She set her coffee down, eyes flicking between them. Oscar still watched her, unblinking. Tyler wiped his palms on his jeans. Nina whispered something to her brother, voice too low to catch. Outside, the wind howled louder, shaking the windows. Kara leaned back in the creaky chair, her legs stretched out, tapping her foot restlessly. She hated being stuck anywhere, especially here, in the middle of nowhere, with a bunch of strangers. Mason cracked open another can from his small cooler, grinning at her. "Sure you don't want one, sweetheart? Might take the edge off." She gave him a sharp look. "I'm good. Suit yourself." He tipped the can back, loud gulp. Oscar moved quietly behind the counter, checking the locks on the back door. Kara's eyes followed him. Calm, silent, controlled. Something about him made her stomach twist. Nina and Tyler sat close together, their quiet conversation just a faint murmur. Tyler kept darting glances at Kara, almost like he wanted to say something, then backing off. Kara's phone vibrated weakly on the table. She snatched it up, checking the screen. Still no service. She sighed and set it down. "Figures." Mason smirked. "Welcome to the mountains. Nothing but snow, bad coffee, and worse company." "Yeah, no kidding," Kara muttered under her breath. Outside, the wind howled like something alive. The windows shuddered in their frames. Oscar returned to the group, his boots thudding on the old tile floor. He met Kara's gaze for a second, then looked away. The old gas station clock on the wall ticked loudly. Almost 11 p.m. Kara rubbed her face, exhaustion creeping in. She didn't want to sleep here. Hell, she didn't even want to sit here. But what choice did she have? Outside, the snow piled higher, swallowing her car's tires. The world beyond the glass looked dead, cold, and endless. She glanced once more at the group. Mason, sloppy and grinning. Nina, alert but quiet. Tyler, fidgeting. Oscar, standing still like a statue. Kara exhaled sharply, whispering to herself, "This night's never gonna end." Kara shoved her hands deep into her jacket pockets, feeling the crumpled pack of cigarettes. She hadn't smoked in weeks. Rehab rules. But now, screw it. She stood, grabbing the keys off the table. "I'm stepping out for a smoke." Mason raised his can in lazy approval. "Atta girl." Nina barely looked up. Tyler watched her go, eyes wide and uncertain. Outside, the cold hit Kara like a punch, stinging her cheeks. The wind howled through the lot, snow swirling in sharp little blasts. She pulled her hood up and ducked her head down, boots crunching over the ice. With shaking fingers, she lit the cigarette, cupping the flame close. She inhaled deeply, leaning against the side of her car, eyes half closed. The storm raged around her, white and endless. Kara blew out a shaky breath, trying to settle her nerves. But her eyes kept drifting, restless, across the lot. The Jeep, the pickup, and then the white van. It sat at the far edge, half buried under the thickening snow, its windows fogged over. Kara's brow furrowed. Something about it made her stomach twist. She took another drag from the cigarette, then pushed off the car, moving slowly toward the van. Kara's boots slipped slightly on the icy ground as she crept toward the van. She kept glancing back at the gas station, where the faint glow of light poured through the grimy windows. Her cigarette burned low between her fingers. Up close, the van looked even worse. Dented on the side, streaked with mud, rust crawling along the edges. Snow piled against its tires, half swallowing them. She narrowed her eyes, trying to see through the window, but the frost was too thick. Kara raised her sleeve, wiped a small circle clear. She bent down, peering inside. At first, she saw only darkness. Old blankets, a tangle of ropes, something heavy in the back. Then, movement. Her breath hitched. Tiny, frantic eyes stared back at her. A child, dark-haired, pale-skinned, maybe 8 years old. Taped mouth, wrists bound. The girl pressed her face to the window, wide-eyed, shaking. Kara's cigarette dropped from her fingers, vanishing into the snow. She stumbled back, heart hammering so hard it drowned out the wind. Her throat clenched. She tried to swallow, but her mouth was dry. What the hell is this? Who? The girl inside banged her bound fist softly against the glass, eyes desperate. Kara's mind screamed. She spun around, looking wildly back at the gas station. Inside, Mason leaned back in his chair, laughing. Nina poured water into a cup. Tyler fidgeted. Oscar stood near the door, unreadable. One of them put her in there. Kara's chest tightened. Her breath came in short, fast bursts, fogging in the freezing air. She staggered back another step, nearly slipping on the ice. Her hands trembled as she gripped her jacket. Calm down. Think. Her eyes darted back to the van. The girl inside watched her, shaking, tears streaking her face. Kara clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. Whose van is this? Who? She turned sharply, eyes fixed on the gas station. Through the window, she could see them. Mason tipping his drink back. Nina talking quietly to Tyler. Oscar still by the door, watching. She could feel his gaze even through the glass. Kara's stomach twisted. Go inside. Tell someone. Who? What if it's one of them? What if they come out here? Her legs itched to run, to bolt into the night. But where? There was no signal, no cars passing by, just miles of frozen road buried under the storm. She pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to steady her shaking. The girl inside banged weakly on the window again. Kara's eyes filled with tears she didn't even realize were there. Shit, she whispered. Shit, shit, shit. She squeezed her eyes shut, pulling in one deep breath. 2. Get it together. Don't panic. Go slow. She opened her eyes, fixed them on the gas station, and started walking back toward the door. Legs stiff, heart pounding so loud it roared in her ears. The bell over the gas station door jingled softly as Kara pushed inside. Warmth hit her face, but it didn't help. Her hands were ice. Her stomach churned. Mason glanced up from his seat. Cold out there, huh? Kara forced a tight smile. Yeah, freezing. Oscar's eyes locked onto hers for a moment, sharp and unreadable. Then he shifted his gaze away, sipping from a thermos. Nina looked up. You okay? Kara nodded quickly, maybe too quickly. Yeah, just needed air. She rubbed her hands together, heart slamming in her chest, trying to keep her face neutral. Act normal. Don't let them see you're rattled. She moved toward the coffee pot again, pouring herself another cup, just to keep her hands busy. Her fingers shook so badly, the liquid almost sloshed over the rim. Tyler gave her a nervous smile. Storm's not letting up, huh? Nope, Kara said softly, eyes flicking toward the window. Snow slammed against the glass, howling outside. She sat down at the table's edge, clutching her cup, scanning the group. Mason leaned back, feet kicked up, chuckling at something only he thought was funny. Oscar sat still, calm, watching. Nina kept glancing at her brother, whispering now and then. Which one? Kara's brain raced. Whose van is it? Who locked up that kid? Her palms were slick with sweat despite the cold. She swallowed hard, forcing the coffee down, eyes darting between them. The girl outside, Emmy, was waiting. Kara clenched her jaw. I need a plan, fast. Kara leaned forward on the table, forcing her mouth into a casual smirk. So, she said lightly, tapping her coffee cup, who's driving that white van out there? Mason snorted, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Not me, sweetheart. My baby's right outside. That's the red pickup. Nina raised an eyebrow. Why? Kara shrugged. Just wondering. Looks kinda old, that's all. Oscar's voice came in, smooth and low. Not mine. He didn't look at her when he said it. Tyler shook his head quickly. We came in a blue sedan. Kara's heart pounded, but she gave a small laugh. Huh. Guess someone left it there then. Mason chuckled. Or the owner's dead in a ditch somewhere. Nina shot him a sharp glare. Not funny. Mason grinned, rocking back in his chair. Relax, I'm just saying. Kara took a sip of coffee, forcing her hand to stay steady. Her mind spun, keeping track of their answers. Not Mason's, not Oscar's, not Nina and Tyler's. So the whose? She plastered on a thin smile, eyes darting toward the window, the shape of the van barely visible under the piling snow. Outside, the storm screamed against the glass. Kara drummed her fingers lightly on the table, pretending she was relaxed. Mason stretched out his arms, yawning loudly. Man, wish I'd grabbed more beer before this damn storm hit. She forced a chuckle. So Mason, you're a trucker, right? He grinned, tapping the brim of his cap. Born on the road, baby. Drive that pickup out front? Hell yeah. He slapped his knee. Ain't pretty, but she runs. Kara nodded slowly, filing it away. She turned her eyes on Oscar, who leaned against the counter with his arms crossed. What about you, Oscar? He raised one eyebrow. What about me? Your Jeep, right? He gave a small nod. Yeah. His eyes didn't leave hers. Kara's stomach twisted. She shifted her gaze to Nina and Tyler. And you guys, you said the blue sedan? Tyler opened his mouth, but Nina cut in smoothly. Yeah. Kara caught the flicker between them. A subtle glance, too quick to fully read. Her heart pounded faster. They're hiding something. One of them is. She forced another laugh, pushing back her chair. Guess I'm just bored. Stuck here all night with strangers. Mason chuckled. Ain't we all? Oscar's eyes stayed sharp, tracking every move she made. Outside, the wind howled harder, rattling the windows. Kara wrapped her arms around herself, fighting the shiver crawling up her spine. Kara slipped her phone from her jacket pocket under the table, shielding it with her hand. She flicked the screen on. No service. Her stomach sank. She turned the phone slightly, trying to catch a signal, even one weak bar. Nothing. She let out a quiet breath, trying to keep her face still. Be right back, she mumbled, pushing up from her chair. Oscar's head turned slightly, watching her. Kara gave him a faint smile, then headed for the door. The cold slammed into her the second she stepped outside. The wind bit at her cheeks, blowing her hair back. She moved quickly toward the edge of the lot, away from the window, clutching her phone up to the sky. Come on, come on. The screen stayed dead. No signal, no bars, no hope. Kara let out a shaky laugh, a half sob. She was trapped. Completely, totally trapped. She turned, eyes flicking toward the van. Inside, she could barely make out the shape of the little girl, still pressed against the window, still staring. Kara's chest tightened. She ran a hand through her hair, spinning back toward the gas station. Inside, Mason laughed loudly, voice muffled through the glass. Oscar leaned against the counter, still watching her. Kara's pulse pounded in her ears. Who do I tell? Who can I trust? The bell over the door jingled softly as Kara stepped back inside. Warmth hit her face again, but it didn't chase off the shaking in her hands. She closed the door carefully, pulling her hood down, glancing quickly around the room. Mason smirked at her, raising his can. Back already? Thought you were escaping. Kara gave a weak smile. No such luck. Oscar stood a little closer to the door now, his dark eyes locked on her. He didn't blink. Nina looked up from the table, her expression tight, guarded. Tyler hunched his shoulders, nervously rubbing his hands. Kara's throat tightened. She moved to the counter, pretending to fuss with the coffee cups, trying to slow her breathing. Inside her chest, her heart pounded so hard she was sure they could hear it. Think. You can't just scream it out. What if you pick the wrong one? What if they turn on you? She risked a glance at the window. Snow slammed against the glass, a white wall outside. Her fingers gripped the edge of the counter. You're stuck here, Kara. No phone, no car, no help. Mason stretched out his legs with a loud sigh. So anybody got cards? Guess we're in for a long-ass night. Oscar gave him a sharp look, quiet. Nina reached for her water, eyes flicking briefly toward Kara. Kara's chest burned. She forced a shaky breath, trying to calm the rising panic inside. You're on your own. Her eyes darted between them, her mind racing. And outside, out there in the freezing dark, the child was waiting. Kara wiped her sweaty palms on her jeans. The conversation at the table had drifted. Mason rambling about his old trucking routes. Nina and Tyler murmuring quietly. Oscar still lingered near the door, arms crossed, watching everything. Kara's eyes darted toward the back hallway. She took a slow breath. Okay, you've got to move now. Standing casually, she stretched her arms. Bathroom? She asked lightly. Oscar gave a slow nod, his eyes sharp. Back there. Thanks. Kara forced her legs to move, walking calmly past the shelves of dusty snacks and into the shadowed back hall. She paused by the bathroom door, heart hammering. Then, quietly, carefully, she turned and slipped out the side exit, pushing the door open as silently as she could. The cold hit her instantly, stinging her skin. She ducked into the shadows, her boots crunching over the ice, breath fogging in sharp bursts. The white van sat ahead, half buried in snow, still and silent. Kara clenched her fists, her whole body trembling, and crept closer. Kara's boots crunched softly as she approached the van. Her breath puffed in quick, shaky bursts, clouding the air. She reached out, grabbed the handle, yanked, locked. She ran to the side door, yanked again. Nothing. Damn it, she whispered, teeth chattering. Inside, the little girl pressed her face to the window, eyes wide, fist knocking weakly against the glass. Kara wiped her sleeve across the window again, peering in, heart racing. I need something to break this. A rock, a wrench, anything. Suddenly, a gust of wind slammed against her, making her stumble back. She spun, glancing at the gas station. The side door she'd slipped out of stood closed, shadowed under the awning. She jogged back to it, grabbing the handle. She yanked. It didn't budge. Kara's chest tightened. She yanked harder. Nothing. Shit, she hissed, pounding her fist on the wood. Her pulse roared in her ears as she looked wildly around, snow swirling thick around her. The storm screamed across the lot, drowning her in cold, in panic. Kara pounded harder on the back door, fist slamming into the cold wood. Hey, let me in. Her voice cracked, barely rising over the howling wind. She twisted the handle again, shaking it, her chest heaving. Why is it locked? Why? Suddenly, the door yanked open. Oscar stood there, filling the doorway, his face shadowed, dark eyes narrowed. Kara froze, breath catching in her throat. He stared at her for one long second, jaw tight. Where were you? His voice was low, sharp. Kara forced a shaky smile. Just needed some air. It's freezing out here. Oscar's eyes flicked past her toward the van. His mouth tightened slightly. Her stomach lurched. He stepped back, opening the door wider. Get in this. Kara swallowed hard, nodding quickly. Yeah, thanks. She slipped past him, her shoulder brushing his arm as she rushed back into the dim hallway, heart slamming against her ribs. Behind her, the door clicked shut, locking again. Kara stumbled into the hallway, pulling her hood down, teeth chattering. Her heart thudded so hard it made her hands shake. Behind her, Oscar locked the door with a soft click, his boots heavy on the floor as he followed. Kara forced herself to keep walking, to act normal. Back in the main room, Mason looked up from his seat, smirking. Told you it's brutal out there. She gave a weak laugh, rubbing her arms. Yeah, no kidding. Nina glanced over sharply. Tyler's knee bounced under the table, eye eyes flicking nervously between them all. Kara crossed to the counter, pretending to busy herself with the coffee cups again, but her eyes darted toward the window. Outside, the white van sat still, buried deeper in snow. Inside, Emmy waited, terrified, freezing, alone. Kara's breath came short, shallow. She wrapped her hands around the cup, trying to steady them. Oscar stood by the door, watching everything. Mason stretched out, cracking his knuckles, humming softly. Nina leaned in toward Tyler, murmuring something in a low voice. The room felt smaller, tighter. The walls seemed closer. Kara's throat tightened. She was running out of time. Kara's fingers tapped nervously against the counter. Her eyes darted toward Oscar, still standing near the door, arms crossed, quiet, watchful. She swallowed hard. If anyone here can help, it's him, right? Taking a deep breath, she pushed off the counter and crossed the room, moving close. "Hey," she whispered, voice low. Oscar turned slightly, one eyebrow raised. "Yeah?" Kara leaned in, glancing over her shoulder to make sure Mason and Nina weren't paying attention. "There's something outside," she murmured, barely moving her lips. "In the van." Oscar's jaw tensed slightly. His eyes stayed locked on hers. "What do you mean?" She licked her dry lips. "A kid, tied up, in the back." Oscar's face didn't change. Not shock, not surprise. Just still, calm. Kara's stomach fluttered. "I didn't know who else to tell," she whispered. Oscar nodded slowly, his gaze flicking briefly toward the window. "All right," he said quietly. "We'll handle it." Kara exhaled sharply, some of the tension leaking from her shoulders. She glanced back at Mason and Nina, who were mid-conversation, voices rising slightly. Oscar touched her elbow lightly. "Stay calm." Kara nodded, biting her lip. "Stay calm. Yeah, sure." Oscar leaned a little closer, his voice low and smooth. "How long were you outside?" Kara blinked. Not long. A few minutes." "Did anyone see you?" Her chest tightened. "No, I don't think so." Oscar's eyes flicked to the window again. His face stayed blank, unreadable. Kara shifted on her feet, unease creeping up her spine. "Shouldn't we call the cops or something?" she whispered. Oscar shook his head slowly. "No signal. You tried already, right?" "Yeah, but we handle it ourselves," Oscar murmured, eyes sharp. "If we panic, we tip them off." Kara swallowed hard. "Them? Who's them?" Oscar's calmness, the cold control in his voice, it started to press down on her. She glanced back at Mason and Nina. Mason had started laughing again, loud and sharp. Nina's face was tight, her hands clenched. Tyler looked on the verge of snapping. Kara pulled her arms in, hugging herself. Oscar leaned in slightly. "Don't say anything yet. Let me think." Kara forced a shaky nod, but inside her gut twisted. Why isn't he more surprised? Why isn't he asking more questions? Her eyes darted toward the van again. Oscar followed her gaze, and for the first time, Kara saw it. A flicker of something cold in his eyes. The tension in the room snapped like a frayed wire. "Would you just sit down and shut up?" Nina's voice cut sharp across the room. Mason barked a laugh, raising his drink. "Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Nurse. Didn't know you were in charge here." "I'm serious, Mason. You're drunk. You're making this worse." Tyler shifted nervously, tugging at his sleeve. "Come on, guys, let's just stay out of it, kid," Mason snapped, jabbing a thick finger toward him. "You've been shaking like a damn leaf since we got here." Nina stood abruptly, chair scraping back. Say that again. Kara flinched, stepping slightly away from Oscar, her eyes darting between them. Oscar didn't move. He just watched. Calm. Too calm. Mason let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Man, this night's going straight to hell. Nina crossed her arms tightly, her jaw clenched. Tyler stepped between them, hands raised. Please, let's not fight, okay? Please. Kara's heart pounded harder. The fight, the noise, the attention. This is bad. This is all going bad. She took a slow step back, barely breathing, her eyes flicking to Oscar. He still hadn't blinked. Kara's hands clenched at her sides. She watched Mason and Nina square off, voices rising. Tyler caught between them, panicked. But her eyes kept drifting back to Oscar. He hadn't moved. He hadn't reacted. He just stood there, watching. Cold, still. Kara's skin prickled as her breath hitched. Wait, why isn't he trying to break it up? Why isn't he doing anything? Her throat tightened painfully. She turned slightly, just enough to glance at Oscar's hands, tucked calmly into his jacket pockets. His shoulders relaxed, his mouth flat, expressionless. He caught her looking. Their eyes locked. For a second, just a flicker, his lips curved, a faint, knowing smile. Kara's stomach flipped. She forced herself to look away, swallowing down the rising panic in her chest. I told the wrong person. Her pulse thundered in her ears. I'm screwed. Mason slammed his can down hard on the table, the sharp clack cutting through the tense air. All night, he growled, eyes narrowing at Tyler. You've been twitching, whispering, acting jumpy. What the hell are you hiding, kid? Tyler flinched back, his face pale. What? Nothing, I'm not... Bullshit, Mason barked, surging to his feet. His chair skidded back, clattering to the floor. Nina shot up instantly, moving between them. Mason, back off. He's just scared. Mason shoved past her, grabbing a fistful of Tyler's jacket, yanking him upright. Talk, you little punk. Whose van is it? Huh? What the hell are you you part of? Tyler's hands scrabbled at Mason's thick arms, eyes wide, panicked. I don't know, I swear. Kara froze where she stood, heart hammering so hard she felt dizzy. Oscar, still by the wall, didn't move. His dark eyes flicked between them, calm, cold. Kara clenched her fists. This is spiraling fast. Let go of him, Nina shouted, shoving at Mason's arm with both hands. Mason barely budged, his grip tight on Tyler's jacket. Tyler gasped, squirming, face crumpling with panic. I said let go, Nina yelled, pounding her fists against Mason's chest. Kara's breath came short and fast as she backed a step, watching the scene explode in front of her. Do something now. She darted a glance toward Oscar. He hadn't moved. He stood by the wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp, just watching. Kara's stomach twisted. Why isn't he stepping in? Why isn't he helping? Tyler gave a small, broken cry. Nina! Nina grabbed at Mason's arm again, her voice cracking. You're hurting him. Mason, stop it. Mason leaned down, face inches from Tyler's. You've been hiding something all night, boy. Tell me what it is, or I'll... Kara's hands clenched into fists. Her heart slammed in her chest. She took a shaky breath. Then she moved. Kara lunged forward, grabbing Mason's arm with both hands. Back off, she shouted, yanking hard. Mason snarled, jerking away from her grip. Stay out of it. But Nina used the split second to shove herself between Mason and Tyler, wrapping her arms around her brother protectively. Tyler gasped, shoulders shaking, tears slipping down his cheeks. "Touch him again, I swear to God," Nina snapped, eyes blazing. Kara planted her feet, bracing herself. Mason was big, drunk, and angry. She could feel the heat rolling off him, smell the sharp reek of alcohol. Then, Oscar finally moved. Slow, measured steps. He walked forward, hands still in his jacket pockets, eyes cold and steady. "Mason," Oscar said calmly, voice like a blade. "Back off." Mason let out a breathless laugh. "Oh, now you want to play cop?" Kara's throat tightened. She stepped slightly back, eyes flicking between them, pulse roaring in her ears. Something's about to break. Mason let go of Tyler's jacket, but only so he could square up to Oscar. "Oh, I'd love to see you try something, big man," Mason slurred, grinning wide, teeth yellow. Oscar's face stayed blank. His hand slid slowly out of his pocket. Kara's breath caught. "Mason, stop," Nina warned, holding tightly to Tyler, who was shuddering in her arms. Mason chuckled, stepping forward, puffing out his chest. "Come on, tough guy. Come on." Oscar's arm moved fast. Something flashed. A small blade, short but sharp. He plunged it forward, quick and brutal. Mason staggered, eyes wide. For a second, he didn't make a sound, just stared, mouth open. Then he looked down. Blood spread across his shirt, dark and wet. He let out a guttural noise, stumbling back, clutching at his stomach. Kara let out a strangled gasp, hands flying to her mouth. Nina screamed, dragging Tyler back toward the wall. Oscar stood perfectly still, the knife in his hand, face calm, eyes cold. Mason crashed to his knees, choking, blood pooling on the floor. The room fell into dead silence. Kara's heart pounded so loud she thought it might break her ribs. She stared at Oscar, realization crashing down on her like a wave of ice. I trusted the wrong person. Oscar's hand lifted, the blood-slicked knife gleaming under the dull fluorescent lights. "Sit down," he said softly. Kara's legs wobbled, her breath hitched in her throat. Tyler sobbed as Nina pulled him to the floor, shielding his body with hers. Oscar's eyes flicked to Kara. "You too." She backed up, hands raised, shaking. Slowly, she lowered herself onto the nearest chair, her heart slamming against her chest so hard she thought she might pass out. Mason lay on the floor, gasping wetly, clutching his stomach. Blood spread out in a dark pool beneath him, his eyes wide and wild. Oscar knelt beside him, voice low. "You were supposed to keep it clean, Mason. Get her up the mountain, no mess." Mason coughed hard, spitting blood. "You psycho," Oscar stood, wiping the knife casually on Mason's jacket. Kara's mouth went dry. Her brain screamed at her to run, but her body wouldn't move. Oscar turned slowly, facing them, his calm mask fully gone. "I didn't want to do this," he murmured, "but you people just couldn't leave it alone." Oscar paced slowly in front of them, the knife glinting in his hand. Kara's breath came in short, sharp bursts. She pressed herself back into the chair, fingers digging into the edges, trying to stay still. Nina wrapped both arms around Tyler, whispering softly, trying to keep him from shaking apart. Oscar's voice was smooth, controlled. "We were supposed to be gone already. Off the mountain, out of state, no witnesses." He glanced down at Mason, who wheezed softly on the floor, blood still spilling between his fingers. "But this idiot," Oscar kicked Mason's boot lightly, eyes cold. "Stopped for drinks, got sloppy, pulled us into this dump." Kara's stomach twisted. "You," she whispered, throat raw. "You took that girl." Oscar's eyes flicked to her, sharp and amused. "Took? She was never yours." Kara's hands curled into fists. Her whole body trembled with rage and fear. "You sick bastard," Nina hissed, her voice low and shaking. Oscar smiled faintly. "Oh, you have no idea." Kara's mind raced. She'd told him everything, trusted him, handed over her only piece of leverage. And now, they were trapped. Kara's breath came in short, shaky gasps. She gripped the edge of the chair so hard her knuckles went white. "You trusted him." Her eyes darted to Oscar, tall, calm, quiet Oscar, standing with a bloodied knife, pacing the room like he owned it. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, the full weight crashing down. "You told him everything. You handed him the whole situation on a silver platter." Her stomach twisted painfully. She wanted to scream, to hit something, to claw her way out of the walls. But she couldn't. Not yet. She forced herself to glance sideways at Nina. The woman's jaw was tight, her arms wrapped protectively around Tyler, whose shoulders shook as silent tears ran down his face. Kara's throat closed. "I screwed up. I really screwed up." Oscar turned sharply, his eyes landing on her. Kara jerked her gaze down, staring hard at her trembling hands. The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. And Kara knew they were running out of time. Oscar moved to the counter, calmly setting the knife down for a moment. He reached over, poured himself a glass of water, and took a slow sip, as if none of them were there. Kara's eyes flicked up, locking briefly with Nina's. For 1 second, they stared at each other. No words, no nods, just a silent, raw connection. Nina's arm tightened around Tyler. Kara's fingers twitched on the edge of the chair. Oscar turned slightly, glancing out the window toward the van. "You all made this a lot harder than it needed to be," he murmured, more to himself than to them. Kara felt her heartbeat slam against her ribs, faster and faster. "We need to do something." Nina's gaze sharpened, just a flicker. Her eyes darted briefly toward the counter, the heavy coffee pot sitting just a few feet away. Kara followed the glance. She felt her throat tighten, a rush of cold adrenaline burning through her limbs. "We have one shot." Oscar set the glass down with a soft clink and reached for the knife again. Kara's breath hitched, her muscles tensed. This was it. Oscar's fingers closed around the knife, lifting it calmly off the counter. Kara's heart slammed in her chest. She saw Nina tense. Just a flicker, just a breath. Now. Kara surged forward, grabbing the heavy coffee pot with both hands and hurling it. The pot shattered against Oscar's shoulder with a loud crack, shards and hot liquid flying. Oscar let out a sharp grunt, stumbling sideways. Nina was already moving, grabbing a chair and swinging it hard. The wood splintered against Oscar's back, driving him down. "Tyler, move!" Nina shouted, her voice raw and panicked. Oscar roared, twisting, the knife flashing as he slashed blindly. Kara lunged, grabbing at his arm, fingers digging into his sleeve, trying to hold him back. Oscar snarled, shoving hard. His strength sent her crashing back into the shelves, a rain of dusty snack bags tumbling down around her. Nina swung again, but Oscar spun, knocking her aside with a brutal backhand. Kara scrambled to her feet, head pounding. Tyler was already crawling toward Oscar's jacket, eyes wide, fingers trembling. The van keys. Kara's chest clenched. Please, God, let him get them. Tyler's hands shook violently as he pawed at the heavy jacket crumpled on the floor. "Kara," he gasped. I can't. "Find the keys," Kara shouted, scrambling back up, blood pounding in her ears. Nina groaned on the ground, one hand pressed to her face, blinking through tears. Oscar was already pushing to his feet, shoulders heaving, knife gripped tight. Kara rushed forward, slamming her shoulder into his side, trying to knock him down again. Oscar staggered slightly, but didn't fall. He twisted, snarling, the knife flashing past her ribs so close she felt the air shift. "Tyler," Nina rasped out, dragging herself upright. Tyler let out a cry of relief, his hand closing around the small metal keys. "I got them," he yelled, scrambling to his feet. Oscar's head snapped toward the sound. Kara's stomach dropped. "Run!" she screamed. Oscar lunged. Kara barely had time to throw herself sideways as the knife sliced past, catching the edge of her jacket. She hit the ground hard, gasping, her shoulder throbbing. Nina staggered forward, grabbing at Oscar's arm, screaming, "Leave him alone!" Oscar snarled, twisting sharply. The back of his fist slammed into Nina's face, sending her crashing to the floor with a choked cry. Tyler bolted for the door, keys clutched tight. Feet slipping on the blood-slick floor. Kara's vision swam, but she forced herself up, her whole body screaming in pain. Oscar whipped around, locking eyes with her for one sharp electric second. Then he spun and sprinted after Tyler. The bell over the door jingled violently as Oscar shoved it open, vanishing into the roaring blizzard. Kara staggered, one hand pressed to the shelf for balance, chest heaving. Outside, she heard Tyler's thin voice, muffled and desperate. She turned, saw Nina pushing herself upright, blood running from her nose. Their eyes met, no words. Kara stumbled toward the door. Nina followed. Together, they plunged out into the storm. The cold slammed into Kara like a wall, snatching the breath from her lungs. Snow whipped across the lot in thick, blinding sheets, stinging her eyes and freezing her skin. Ahead, she barely saw Tyler, his small figure darting through the swirling white, clutching the keys, feet slipping on the ice. Oscar's dark shape loomed close behind, cutting through the storm with terrifying speed. "Tyler, run!" Kara screamed, her voice almost lost in the roaring wind. Nina stumbled beside her, one arm clutched tight to her bleeding face, the other outstretched as she pushed forward. Tyler reached the van, fumbling with the keys, hands shaking so badly they slipped from the lock. Oscar was on him in seconds. He grabbed Tyler's jacket, yanking him back hard. The boy let out a strangled cry, feet kicking wildly on the ice. Kara's pulse spiked so hard she thought her heart would explode. She forced her legs to move faster, boots pounding over the frozen ground. Nina let out a ragged, desperate scream. Oscar twisted Tyler roughly, one hand raised, the knife flashing silver in the dim light. Kara was almost there. She threw herself forward, every muscle screaming, reaching out with both hands. Kara slammed into Oscar's back with all her weight, knocking him forward just as the knife swung down toward Tyler. Oscar let out a rough grunt, stumbling, but his grip on Tyler didn't break. He twisted sharply, one arm flinging out, and Kara felt the blow as his elbow crashed into her ribs. She hit the ground hard, gasping. Tyler shrieked as Oscar shoved him away, the boy's small body sliding across the ice and slamming hard into the side of the van. Kara heard the sickening crack as Tyler's head hit metal. "Tyler!" Nina screamed, her voice raw and shattering. Oscar turned, his breath steaming in the frozen air, the knife gleaming red and wet. Kara scrambled backward, her hands scrabbling in the snow. Her chest heaved, every muscle shaking. But her eyes darted, and there, near her knee, She saw the keys Tyler had dropped. Oscar's mouth twisted into a cruel, thin smile. Kara's fingers closed around the keys. Kara's numb fingers fumbled with the keys. Heart hammering so loud she could barely hear over it. Oscar stalked closer, knife raised, his boots crunching over the snow. "Don't!" Kara gasped, eyes wide, chest heaving. "Stay back!" Oscar didn't stop. She spun, slamming the key into the van's lock, jerking the handle up with trembling hands. The door creaked open, icy air swirling inside. Emmy's small face appeared, pale and tear-streaked, eyes huge with terror. Kara grabbed her, pulling her out fast, wrapping both arms tightly around the shivering little girl. Behind her, Nina let out a hoarse cry as she dragged herself up from the snow, limping hard toward them. Oscar lunged. Kara spun, shielding Emmy with her body. But before Oscar's knife reached them, Nina threw herself between them, arms up, body shaking. Oscar's knife arced down, a brutal flash of steel in the swirling snow. Nina shoved forward, slamming both hands into his arm, trying to knock the blade away. "Run, Kara!" she screamed, voice ragged. Oscar snarled, twisting violently, and the knife plunged deep into Nina's side. Her eyes widened, breath catching. For a second, the world froze. Then Nina collapsed, crumpling to the ground with a choked gasp, blood already staining the snow. Kara's throat closed, a scream clawing at her chest but unable to come out. Oscar yanked the knife free, breath hissing through his teeth, turning sharp, wild eyes back on Kara and Emmy. Kara backed up, arms wrapped tight around Emmy, heart slamming so hard she felt sick. Oscar's boots crunched closer. Kara's eyes darted to the storm, the blinding, screaming storm just beyond the lot. Run, now. She sucked in one shaky breath and bolted. Kara grabbed Emmy's tiny, ice-cold hand, yanking her forward. "Run," she rasped, forcing her legs to move, heart hammering, lungs burning. They plunged into the blizzard. The world became white noise, wind screaming, snow slashing across their skin, freezing air tearing at their faces. Behind them, Oscar's furious shouts cut through the storm. "Kara, come back!" Kara didn't look back. She tightened her grip on Emmy, pulling her through the knee-deep snow, legs shaking, breath hitching with every desperate step. The gas station lights vanished behind them, swallowed by the white. All Kara could hear was Emmy's tiny gasps, her own pounding heartbeat, and Oscar's boots crunching through the snow as he chased them. She stumbled, caught herself, dragged Emmy up again. The cold bit deep, tearing into her bones. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Not now. Kara's legs burned with every step. She pulled Emmy through the snow, stumbling, gasping, her lungs on fire. The wind roared in her ears, slamming into her face, cutting like knives. Behind them, Oscar's voice bellowed through the storm. "Kara, stop!" Emmy let out a soft sob, tripping, nearly pulling Kara down. "Come on, baby," Kara gasped, yanking her up. "We have to keep moving. Just a little more." But she knew they couldn't outrun him much longer. Her vision blurred, her fingers were numb. Every step felt like dragging cement blocks. Oscar's shape appeared faintly behind them, dark and fast, moving through the white. Kara choked on a sob, pulling Emmy harder, forcing herself forward, the snow swallowing them whole. A heavy hand slammed onto Kara's shoulder, yanking her back so hard she nearly threw up. She let out a sharp scream as Oscar's weight crashed into her, driving her down into the snow. Emmy shrieked nearby, small fist beating helplessly against Oscar's arm. Kara twisted, clawing, kicking, fighting to break free. Oscar snarled above her, breath hot against her ear. "You should have stayed down, Kara." His knee pinned her chest, driving the air from her lungs. She gasped, bucking hard, her fingers scrambling for anything, a rock, a stick, something. As the cold blade flashed in his hand, Oscar raised the knife, his face a mask of fury. Kara's world narrowed to that one glint of metal, the crushing weight on her chest, the icy burn of snow under her back. She let out a raw, panicked scream. Kara twisted hard, throwing her elbow up blindly, smashing it into Oscar's face. He let out a sharp grunt, his grip slipping for a second. She seized it. With a choked gasp, she rammed her knee up into his side, clawing at his face, her nails scraping skin. Oscar snarled, slamming her back down, fist pounding into her shoulder. Emmy screamed, small fists hitting at Oscar's side. Kara sucked in a breath, teeth bared, and bit hard into Oscar's forearm. He roared, jerking back, the knife slipping slightly in his grip. Kara shoved up with everything she had, knocking him sideways in the snow. For a split second, they both scrambled, slipping, panting, reaching. Kara's hand closed around something cold, sharp. Mason's drop knife, half buried in the snow. Her fingers tightened. Oscar lunged. Oscar's hands clamped onto Kara's shoulders, shoving her back hard, snow spraying around them. Kara let out a ragged, furious scream. She shoved the knife up with both hands, jamming it deep into Oscar's stomach. His eyes went wide, mouth falling open in a stunned, silent gasp. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. Then Oscar crumpled forward, collapsing onto her, heavy and limp. Kara squirmed, twisting out from under him, dragging herself up on shaky arms, gasping, sobbing, her body burning with exhaustion. Emmy knelt nearby, her small hands shaking, face streaked with tears. Kara pulled her close, wrapping both arms tightly around the girl, pressing her face into her hair. Somewhere far away, faint but unmistakable, the sharp wail of sirens broke through the wind. Kara let out a shuddering breath, her whole body trembling. She held Emmy tighter as the storm howled around them, the flashing red and blue lights cutting faint streaks through the white.